we have Rock Sitar here, who is recently out of the School of Mines and spinning out a company from work at the School of Mines that is focusing on manufacturing the hardware to use ammonia as a combustion fuel. I think targeting initially backup generation as a target market. And so we're anxious to hear about that. And then here next to me, we've got Chris Caskey, who is with Delta Brick and Climate. And they are a brick making company that has recently gotten into the business of capturing fugitive methane emissions from abandoned coal mines, and then monetizing that by selling those as carbon credits, which we'll have questions about how all that works in a few moments. And thank you all for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, well, I'd like to jump right in and talk first about how 2023 has been a tough year for climate tech, and we've got a bunch of climate tech people here. We've seen softening of ESG interest from institutional investors, a movement away from early stage innovation towards deployment, high interest rates, and overall difficult climate for an investment. And so I'd like to start by throwing it to you, Sean. I know you're, again, in the process of closing around.
Yep.
So you must have had some interesting conversations with investors this year, and I'd love to hear how that's evolved through this market.
Yeah, so we were initially solely targeting sustainability and climate tech focused entrepreneurs or investors, but in those discussions we found that while they were interested in specifically decarbonizing concrete, a lot of them didn't really have the experience with physical building materials, so while they were interested, they were more of like wait and see. So our focus is more shifted to folks that actually have more of the building material and concrete specific experience in investing, who are interested in sustainability but don't necessarily know that side of the equation. So as 2023 went on, there's been a lot of interest, but again, it's more of we're interested, but you got to prove it first. So I feel like the bar is a little higher for climate tech companies as opposed to other new innovative technology companies.
And do we have good news regarding closing that round or anything to announce yet?
Not yet. We're halfway through our funding raise, so we are still looking to close. But yeah, the conversations are quickening, especially now that we're into 2024, because everyone's got a new fiscal year that they're in and that they've got to deliver on. So we're excited because we're starting to deliver and hit those metrics. So we think that we now present a more palatable opportunity for investors.
Awesome, thanks. Chris, I wanted to bounce that same question to you. I'm not sure what your financing has been like for, I know you just purchased a coal mine in November. Love to hear how that process went and how the market conditions might have affected your decisions.
Yeah, so I've been an entrepreneur in Colorado since about 2014, and I've been generally unimpressed with the investors around here. Like they like software, and if you have a scientific challenge or a real technical challenge, you're gonna lose them pretty fast. And please be the exception that proves the rule for Sean. But what we're doing out in Western Colorado is we're taking clay that's building up in our local irrigation reservoir, and that's our feedstock for our factory. And then at some point, we're going to have this waste methane that's leaking out of abandoned coal mines be the fuel source for the factory. So we have gotten a couple of investors, and they're both Western Colorado wealthy folks who saw like that's a huge benefit to the community, that has a clear business case, but it doesn't have like a software VC growth curve. So we've been immune to whatever's going on in like the VC market, which is where you see the news headlines, and have been able, so small investors, small investments from investors, a lot of revenue, a lot of grants, a lot of loans is how we've funded ourselves.
Awesome, thank you. All right, next question. I wanted to move to talking about decarbonization pathways. And while I think how we're in an all of the above mentality with the path to net zero, looking at all technologies and entertaining all of them in parallel. We also know that eventually emerges a single best solution for every emitting facility, if not every industrial segment. And so, Rock, specifically, I wanted to give you the opportunity to talk about alternative decarbonization pathways for your target market. I think we're probably mostly familiar with ammonia as a maritime fuel, and you have this interesting use case for using it for backup power generation. You could talk about that for a second, about how the target customer would look at that as a solution, or which applications that would be the preferable answer for.
Yeah, absolutely. Our whole spin is to look at ammonia a different way. So everyone is familiar with the Midwestern farming belt, where they use tons of ammonia every day as a fertilizer. We are trying to change the scope, where we're trying to look into using ammonia as a zero carbon fuel. So basically, using it to power existing combustion application without emitting any carbon. With this in mind, this concept is so new. There has to be a lot of education of first the customer, and those are very long cycles where you are putting so much effort into educating and trying to see, portray to them the idea that this is a real solution, not just someone that scientists at the Colorado School of Mines found and talked about. And secondly, there's also kind of the VC scope. What we talked before is that they are also very new into it, and it's kind of the two sides. Someone is super excited because they're seeing potential, or you are more as very large corporate investments where they just kind of throw it away for now because carbon capture and all of those are becoming monetizable, so they can see opportunity to make money there as well. So I would say there's a lot more to be done in educating entire scope of folks working towards decarbonization.
A lot more market development work for your use case. Yeah, interesting. Sean, let me ask you. I think you'll have a different answer to this about alternative pathways. My understanding is your solution stacks with other methods of decarbonizing cement and concrete. In fact, we almost talked about having an entire panel on cement and concrete. There's so much going on in that space.
Yeah.
So could you comment on that?
Well, and I think to your point, I think maybe the Boulder next year, I think that would be a good panel to have, because there's not just us, but there's Prometheus Materials, there's a lot of other companies in the space in Colorado working on this. So as far as our technology goes, graphene we need such a small amount of it per given weight of concrete that it can, in theory, stack with other solutions, such as embedding CO2 gas at the point of curing and mixing, like some companies like Carbon Cure do. So our opportunity is to get our material to universities and to these other labs to get it tested with other innovations, because concrete's the second most used substance on Earth after water. There's a lot of room for innovation in this space. However, being a very conservative industry, folks don't want to implement new technology unless they have the hard data that shows that, okay, if I am going to change my mix, it's going to make me more money and going to make my customers happier, as opposed to doing something new just for new sake.
Awesome, thank you. Joe, I wanted to throw you a question about your target market in terms of geography. We have this conference is explicitly focused on climate action in Colorado, and yet that may not be exactly your target market. I'd love to hear from you how you think about the geography you're looking at, and how much the state level policies might or might not affect where you're going after this initial pilot.
So it's certainly reducing emissions from the oil and gas industry. The oil and gas industry has operations far beyond the borders of Colorado. However, Colorado has for a long time been a leader in really pushing the industry forward in terms of responsible development of those resources, bringing new technologies to the oil field. And so I think it's a really good place for us as a company to bring our new technology that's focused on reducing those emissions at the well pad to market. So I think, we certainly have had a lot of interest from the Colorado-based oil producers in this technology, and working with Bayswater, which I think is the 4th largest producer here in Colorado, to pilot some of our new technology. I think, what the state could do in order to encourage, reduced emissions from the oil field and adoption of technology would be helping to bridge that, murky valley where, as you said, with concrete, it's a very conservative industry. Oil and gas, for a high-tech industry, is extremely conservative. And so, they don't want to try something that's new, that's unproven. And so being able to provide some funds, maybe from the state level, for those pilots of that technology, show, hey, this does work. It's going to not only reduce your emissions, but it's going to increase your bottom line as well. Will get us past that murky valley.
That's an interesting point. Just as a follow-up to that, I think a lot of people now would contend that we are past the age of innovation in climate response and in the age of deployments. We have the technology available, and it's a question of waiting for the character and the will of business leaders to act, to make the investments and act on it. Is that in your industry? What's to prevent all of the other, you said you're working with the 4th largest one in Colorado, what is to prevent all of the others from implementing your solution?
Well, we found that everyone in the oil industry is in a rush to be first, to be second. And so I think once we have the technology deployed and proven, and there's solid data behind it, then it's going to provide, the early adopters a strategic advantage in the marketplace. And everyone else will be, hopefully, in a rush to pile on after that.
Chris, you look like you may have something to.
No, I was the rush to be first to be second
Yeah.
is that's
Yeah.
Spot on.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's ask Chris about, we've talked previously about the issue of public awareness, or even industry awareness and education as a bottleneck to deployment. I think for you, I suspect that's a particular issue with monetizing the capture of the fugitive emissions and getting the value out of that relative to the actual value provided to the environment. Is that something you'd like to give a few thoughts on?
Yeah, so we have a invisible problem, which is these old abandoned coal mines that they're underground, they were mined down into gassy geology, and now there's just huge amounts of methane coming up out of the ground or up through the gravel or through old fan shafts or whatever. And that's invisible. There are places where you shouldn't smoke because it might explode, but invisible problem, and that's coming out at many tons a year. The state of Colorado has a social cost of carbon. Can I raise a hands for anyone? Social cost of pollutants, heard of it? Couple? Yeah, all right. So social cost of a pollutant is, hey, this emission is coming out. We know that it causes ozone. We know that ozone causes asthma. We know that asthma causes hospital visits and deaths. So can we back calculate each of those social costs to the actual ton that came out? And so in Colorado, that number is something like $1,700 per ton of methane. And when we go out and capture a ton of methane and destroy it, we get paid something like, I don't know, $500 for that, which is pretty good. But we monetize via this offset market where some company is paying us to do that, and then they count that against their in-house emissions. And that gets to be a little bit squishy. It could be companies can get accused of greenwashing for doing that. We think our offsets are super solid, but I wonder what you guys think about the offset markets, or if you play in that at all.
From our industry, carbon offsets are tantalizing, but again, very conservative, and our customers, quite frankly, aren't really sure climate change is a thing. So from our perspective, our technology is designed to meet our customers where they're at today. issues of quantification of carbon emissions, because I can't speak for methane emissions, but for carbon specific to building materials and for concrete, it's still very difficult to actually differentiate. Is this coming from are these emissions coming from the production of the material, or are they just background emissions? Or because concrete actually absorbs CO2 in its natural life cycle, is it from the naturally absorbed CO2? So we would like to be able to offer monetization of carbon offsets, but we don't want to turn off our customers in the process while we're doing that. So there's still some research and questions that need to be answered from our point of view before we really dive in first.
And I'll just mention that we have a panel this afternoon on carbon accounting. So if anyone's interested in that might be an interesting place to dive into. I think your customers will eventually come to this topic by being asked by their customers for whom they are scope 3 emissions to account for the embodied carbon in the building materials, not directly.
And that's something that we'd like to be able to offer as part of the relationship with our customers is, hey, look, you're already pouring this material, you're offsetting X amount of emissions by using our technology. Let's go ahead and monetize that and make you extra revenue. So we want to be able to offer that, but only after we've developed a relationship with the product.
Awesome.
Just to add, so I think carbon offsets are absolutely fantastic because for the first time it offers big companies to actually have a way, and they're incentivized to somewhat start thinking to reduce their carbon emissions, and still it's in their scope of financials. So for a long time, let's say Facebooks and Metas, the Googles, and all those big facilities have giant revenues. They were investing, how we said before, into green technologies just because they were interested, and they were incentivized because they were pressured by their shareholders to do something about it, because they have revenue, so they can spend a lot of money on it. I think for the first time, carbon offsets actually offer someone to still decrease their footprint and then spend a certain amount of money that is quantifiable. What we are trying to do with ammonia is actually complement that with someone would be thinking that we're competing with carbon offsets. We're trying to complement it where we can completely eliminate carbon emissions from the end user, which can in addition to someone else reducing their carbon emissions from your company, can truly decarbonize and reach net zero. I don't think any company in the world should ever decarbonize fully by just buying carbon offsets. But coupling and stacking multiple technologies together can really offer a path to really solid net zero goal that can get us there.
Yeah, and net zero's got to be the first goal, but true zero has to be the real goal. Because anything, right, we're at 420 parts per million right now, and we've got wildfires and droughts and you name it. So whenever people talk about, oh, we still have this carbon budget before 1.5C or before 2C, that budget only exists if you think the current amount of wildfires is fine and we would like a little bit more. So that's just a rant that I could go on, but I'll leave it there.
Yeah, thank you guys for bringing that up, because we're teeing up a lot of important questions that really each of them should and could be, we could dive into them in a custom panel on the offset market. Excellent point that net zero is not the goal. Net zero is a waypoint to zero. And if you'll notice out on our posters in the hallway with our informational posters, there is a nice graph of Colorado gross emissions. And you'll notice we made a point of, we have gross emissions on there, not net. Colorado reports net emissions, and we did the arithmetic to make sure it's gross, so that there's no, occlusion of obfuscation of what's really happening with removals towards the end of the century. So, okay, let's turn to I say this is the most important question of the day. Is this conference is intended to focus specifically on action. There's a million conferences out there that are more educational educational in nature, and this one was conceptualized to be focused on action in Colorado and additionality. There's a lot that's been done in Colorado. We have a very progressive state that's implemented a lot of policies that are incentivizing a lot of different sectors to decarbonize. So what we want to hear, and this is a tough question for you guys, is I'd like to hear from each of you, what else could be done to get you to market faster, at larger scale, cheaper, safer, more effectively? Is it money? Is it just time? Is it business leaders making decisions? Are there policies still that could change in the next legislative session? Are there policies that need to be enforced, that aren't being enforced? Building codes? What in your pie in the sky, because we're going to collect all this information from all the panels and deliver it to the legislators. So let's be aspirational. Starting down the line with Joe, like what would get you more pilots, more commercial scale? Let's go beyond pilots, faster with more companies.
Well, I think certainly if there was some funding available from the state for oil companies to try these new technologies, I think that would help a great deal. I think also if the oil producers were incentivized to adopt technology which gets them beyond what the current regulations are, go above and beyond. For instance, one thing they could do is maybe streamline the permitting process for getting new wells, if you adopt technology that's beyond what the current regulation states. So I think that could be a big motivator. I think there's a misconception that oil and gas is like this evil thing, like we need to get rid of it. This is a transition. I think that everyone in this room can agree that if you can't snap your fingers and tomorrow we're going to power the entire world off of solar and wind. It's going to take time for us to adopt these new technologies. And so what we need to do is we need to develop and produce the resources that we need in the interim, the oil and gas resources, that we're going to consume anyway. And we need to do that in a responsible manner. It's tremendously irresponsible of us not to produce those molecules in a place like Colorado, where we tout we've got the cleanest molecules on the planet that we're producing. If we don't produce them, somebody else is going to produce them because they're getting consumed. And they're not going to have the same responsibility in terms of let's produce this the right way. So I think we need to encourage more oil and gas development under the rules here in Colorado and encourage the oil and gas producers to go above and beyond those rules.
Awesome, thank you. Sean, in your domain, what would get you there faster, at greater scale, more adoption with more customers?
Yeah, I think kind of dovetailing on what he was saying is that if the state were able to and were willing to not mandate technologies be implemented, but offer a financial incentive or financial option for companies to look at technologies and more specifically look at Colorado technologies to implement. So really greasing the skids for private enterprise to get over the fear of, well, it's new technology, it's advanced materials. Well, yes, but we're trying to solve your problems that you're trying to solve already. So it's how does the state help us talk the language of our customers with money, but in a financially responsible manner, not mandating that you have to use NanoCrete. That's not our business model. Our business model is to help as many contractors as possible by demonstrating value on the job site. So where I think the state could help specifically us is we're targeting CDOT to get on their approved materials list. So if the state were able to, like I say, speed the process or grease the skids for Colorado companies to get on that approved materials list quicker, I think that'd be.
I love that. That's very specific. And there are some people from CDOT on the panel at 10 a.m. So let's all go there and ask the question in the Q&A and hold them accountable for bringing them to solutions. Excellent.
Great.
Rock, what would you say? I know you're early in your journey of this startup, and you talked earlier about how there's a need for market development and education. Ammonia is a less solution for power generation or backup power. What can you think of now that would get you from point A to point B faster?
Yeah, I first want to second to what both of you said. I think incentives for very established companies who have very nice revenue model, very nice margins, and they're not currently pressured to do something. I think that would be great incentive money-wise too, so they can be the first, they can trial this technology for the first time and do it almost as a pilot scale funding for it. One of the great examples is New Day Hydrogen, and then CSU just got a grant to establish from the U.S. Department of Transport about $10 million to develop the first hydrogen refueling stations in Colorado. I think that is a great example how federal government can incentivize and help this startups and then in combination with established companies to develop and try the new technology. And so I think that's one of the fundamentals goals, how we can push towards new technologies. And then secondly, I think education and then policy is so important to really educate all of the participants who are looking to solve this major climate challenge, so we can really have all the knowledge we can to choose the best solutions.
Great. I see a theme here. Money for pilots and de-risking conservative end customers to try new stuff rather than waiting and hemming and hawing and waiting for more data longer than necessary. Chris, what would you say to that? What are the bottlenecks that you see that keep you up at night?
Well, first credit to the state. Our company's been really successful getting grants and different forms of capital that the state has subsidized and put out there. So there's a lot of excellent programs. We exist in a pretty unique permitting space in that there are not regulations around what we do. In the recent greenhouse gas reduction roadmap that the state put out, it does instruct Division of Natural Resources to get together with whoever to figure out what to do with coal mine methane, which is like basically a rule for me and 2 other people. And so, but we hope that stays in there, and we hope that that we can have some clarity around what we're up to.
Excellent. So Chris is referring to, there's a 2021 Colorado net zero roadmap report that's out. It's going to be updated every 2 years. The 2023 one apparently is going to be published soon, and the people on the panel at 10 a.m. are going to give us a preview of that. So again, let's go ask questions of them and talk about what's in the 2023 report. There's hopefully more progress on putting specificity around that. So, okay, well, let's turn it over to questions. Audience questions. Who has questions?
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for getting up there and talking with us all. I gotta say, it grates my ears a little bit to hear about trying to give more incentives to oil and gas industry that have record profits. Like, as a taxpayer and a voter, I'm not interested in that. So I'd be interested in pushing you all on thinking more about what other types of regulatory considerations could our state put in place that would help out with decarbonizing these different industries, as opposed to just handing over money to people that are already extremely wealthy.
That's a good point. I would counter that with, from my point of view, mandates only go so far, from like top down, like you have to use this type of material, this type of technology. As good as it may be, consumers and especially American companies don't react well to top-down mandates. So I think there's got to be a fine line walked of how do we incentivize companies that, yes, already make profits hand over fist, but they make that money doing a process and doing things how they've done it for years or decades. So how do we get them to change what they're doing to help us accomplish our climate goals while getting them on the page of, oh, we can also help you make more money as well.
Well,
So it's kind of we got to do both at the same time without necessarily coming with the club of government rules.
And kind of playing off of that, oil and gas is one of the biggest emitters, right? And so we have to do something The industry is not doing that on their own. So how do you get them to implement new technologies? When we go out, we try to get investment to fund the development and testing and deployment of our new technologies to decrease those emissions. We're viewed by the environmentalists as an oil company, oil service company. We're viewed by the oil investors as an environmental company. And so nobody wants to give us money. Meanwhile, the problem remains, and our technology doesn't get adopted. So, you know, I understand, I can appreciate your perspective on this, but at the same time, we have to do something about the problem, and I need money to be able to solve that problem. So where's that gonna come from?
And businesses like to have they like to have tax incentives of some kind. I mean, that's just how it is. So if there is a policy language or policy tool that could be implemented that, hey, you guys are already pumping oil and gas, you guys are already pouring concrete, why not try new technology that will help mitigate some of your financial risk implementing that can already help solve your problems that you complain about regularly. So it's, again, how do we meet these industries where they're at today, helping them get to tomorrow much faster?
Yeah, just pulling on that thread a little bit. We talked about tax incentives and we talked about regulatory. Is there a tax disincentive system where you're implementing some carbon tax that is pulling money away unless that problem is addressed? Like, does that fall in the same bucket at all?
I'll take that one.
Yeah, sure.
I think it'd be fantastic to have a carbon tax and to have a really aggressive one. And that would be a thing that would not only speed the adoption of low carbon technologies, but yeah, you said we can't snap our fingers and transition overnight, but every day is worse, right? So if we had an aggressive carbon tax, we'd drive the adoption of technology, we'd drive now we're not applying for new wells, so we don't need that regulatory framework greased, and then we can make the transition that we know we need to make as fast as we can. So I would love a carbon tax.
And I really think we have the opportunity to come at this from an additive, not a restrictive standpoint. So like a carbon tax, to my ear, rings as we're taking money away from you to solve this problem that you may not really understand. So I think if we can help rephrase it as a jobs creation, as a wealth creation.
Like the Inflation Reduction Act.
Yeah,
with
like
the bilateral bill, because
kind of how we funded oil and gas development in this country in the 80s to help wean us off imports. Like we know how to solve problems with tax incentives. We got to find the right language to use.
And I'll add to that Canada just implemented a carbon tax about a year ago, which was not on anyone's roadmap. It was rather a surprise. They did not use the word tax. They had some Orwellian language so that it wouldn't rankle people. I don't think policy people think that carbon tax is really on the table in the US at the federal or state level. That's not, as far as I understand, an active conversation of something that's realistic, but there are many other policy measures. But in terms of a stick, that's a tough one.
I found in our industry that it's a combination of carrot and stick that works best. If it's just all stick or just all carrot, it doesn't move the needle.
Just to add on that quickly, I think very important scope of this is, okay, there's carbon tax, right? Everyone knows you have to pay this money for a certain amount of emissions. But I think a real important thing is to really start getting education on where that money is going, what it's being used at. It's almost like it's these companies, like, okay, we just keep paying $50 per ton, right? We keep paying, but then you don't know where that money is going from. I think that would be a very good incentive to see what money is used for, what good it's doing, and is it worth keep doing it in the way that it's proposed.
Hi, my name is Lily Hunter. I'm with the Colorado Energy Office. My question is, do any of your companies want to have a relationship or involvement with the state to create these types of carrot and stick situations, or would you rather have a representative from brainstorm with your company to create these incentives or mandates?
We can meet you halfway. Yeah, we're happy to talk to the state, and again, it's not a, how do we help our company, it's a, how do we help advanced technologies get brought to the fore as quickly as possible. So, if we're a part of that conversation, that's awesome, but we don't want to, I don't want to just be the sole representative for our specific industry, so.
So we've actually taken the effort to pull together a consortium of companies that are Colorado-based, that are developing technologies to help decarbonize the oil field. And so we, through that mechanism, engaged with multiple state entities to have that dialogue.
I would love a relationship with the state. That sounds wonderful. Yeah, in a volunteer capacity, I sit on the Colorado Electric Transmission Authority, which is a state entity that does transmission or is very new and is thinking about doing transmission right now. So this climate change is not going to be solved by the private sector. It's the purpose of the state is to make collective action possible, right? And like we're kind of doing that here today, which is cool. But the actual like legal authority, yes, that's hot. I'll shut up.
Mine was a long-winded answer to say yes as well.
Same with us, yeah.
Yeah.
There's an awesome company in Colorado called Starfire just across the corner here, and they're the first ones in ammonia. So I think more people are trying to develop a displacement. It would be great to have a consortium of multiple startups who are working and companies who are the same. So yes.
Well, still working Starfire.
Hi, I'm Megan McCarthy. I'm part of the climate program for the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment with our team. Two-parted question. One more materials focused and cement focused. Just how has, for example, the Buy Clean legislation and like influenced or helped the landscape that your company's operating in, or is that some sort of opportunity that can help the technology advance? And then second part is there are, the Colorado Clean Air Grants Program as well as the Colorado tax credit that I believe kicks in this year for industrial facilities to be able to pilot technology that seems to be right in line with what we're talking about. So are you all aware of those programs and potentially facilitating that your prospective customers apply for some of these grant programs?
So
Speaking of
aware
carrots.
of the programs and how relevant to your specific domains?
Vaguely aware of the programs. My challenge with Colorado grants is the matching portion. But that's part of going with fundraising and all that fun stuff.
Well, it's great to know. That was, and barriers from using them.
Yeah, I get the matching portion, especially from a taxpayer side of things, like don't just throw money at people, I get it. But from an adoption standpoint, like from our initial customer conversations, we haven't had any clean, like their buying decision wasn't influenced by the clean air or clean adoption. To be frank, our customers are not very much in the know in terms of climate legislation. In terms of a positive value add, it's always 99 times out of 100, it's what is on the same trying to take from me now. So it's again, we're in a hard space of we are implementing advanced technology that's cost effective, but also not trying to get them distracted that we're a green company. So I'm all for Colorado State programs to work with our customers, and I'm all for to help on the education side of things. We're not relying on that if our customers aren't aware of it, that's totally fine. We'll be fine. But if they are aware of it and that influences their decisions going forward, great. So.
And I'll just add to clarify, since we did super brief introductions at the beginning, that Sean's product is, you're specifically targeting a shotcrete applications when you spray concrete on the wall, and what his product does is it increases adhesion, so less of it falls to the ground and there's less waste. So it's a material efficiency, a waste reduction play. so they don't have to care yet about green to wanna save money, right?
Right,
Which is,
so our customers, they have an immediate need of, how do I reduce waste on job site and reduce the fine particle dust that comes out from shooting shotcrete out of the gun. So our technology helps that immediately, we don't even have to mention sustainability, which is great. So we're trying to build that relationship with our customers just from a material value add standpoint. And then, as that relationship develops, we work with them to stay.
That's helpful to know, thank you.
Yeah.
That
So
kind
we
of
don't
frames it.
produce, we don't produce concrete and cement ourselves. We're an
Right.
admixture that goes in.
I thought, yeah, I wasn't totally clear about that.
anyone else know about these grants, or?
I think we're pretty well versed in grants, and I've got people always looking. Would love to talk to you more and just make sure we're covering everything. But I will comment that row, CDPHE, they all raised their hand for social cost of pollutants, so.
Yeah, that's what all the hands were.
Yeah.
We're slightly familiar.
Yeah, we are planning to apply for the Colorado Co-Edit grant, so we're currently raising the pre-seed fund to try to get to those that's 50%, 200% match, so to get leverage to hold the $250,000 that's available.
That's the advanced industries one.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Now, I'm not sure if we're familiar or not with that particular grant program. We have worked with the state to go after some federal funds that states have to compete for. And so we've got that collaboration with them to go after that money. Because it tends to be, for our equipment, it's very capital intensive. And so I'm not sure what the limits, dollar limits are on your state level programs, but the federal program was large enough to be able to accommodate what we were trying to do.
Excellent, one last question, what are you in the back?
At Van Dyne, Plastic to Green, we're turning waste plastic into ammonia as using the waste plastic as the feedstock for the hydrogen. My question is really around raising money, and I know you sort of touched on it earlier, but that does seem to be a challenge this day and age. And so if you could point to any of the real investors putting real money into this area in the state. Is basically so far we've raised all of our money in California and other states that seem to have a little bit more of a climate, sense, I guess. And what's your sense of raising Colorado money in
Names
Colorado?
of investors, like anyone have any hot tips on like Colorado based?
Yeah, let me get my Rolodex.
I'm rather pessimistic, but good luck.
I mean, I'm trying to be the eternal optimist. It's a challenge, but I think that 2024 presents an opportunity for Colorado-specific investors, because I think our state has a unique opportunity to be different than California, but going along our own unique sustainability path, as opposed to different than California, but also still being very industrial heavy, kind of like in Texas or New York. So we're geographically right in the center of the North American continent. So we're kind of in a unique spot to be able to perfect this type of technology and innovation and then have it spread out. So I think it's not going to be easy convincing investors, but I think the opportunity is there.
And to build off of that, I mean, Colorado has always led in terms of adoption of stricter regulations and new technologies for oil and gas. And so, that was kind of our idea behind creating this consortium, almost to try to see if we can create a hotbed of innovation here in Colorado for this technology, almost make it the Silicon Valley of clean oil field technology. And so I think that's a powerful story, and hopefully it's the kind of thing that the local investors will be attracted to.
All right, thank you.
Excellent, thank you guys. We're gonna wrap up, and I would encourage you all to, additional questions, follow up with these guys directly, either outside or everyone's name is on the website on the participants list. So thank you all for being here, and thank you guys for attending.